There's a moment in Genesis most readers race past, before the violence, before the field, before the question, "Where is your brother?" Just one verse, and in that verse, for the first time in the whole Bible, sin is named, not as a feeling, not as a mistake, as a predator, crouching at the door. We've been walking the Genesis sequence, conditional immortality, the original Hebrew warning about death, the knowledge tree, the objection about ghosts. Now Genesis 4, Adam and Eve's first sons, 2 brothers, 2 offerings, a killing in a field, the story everyone knows and almost everyone learns wrong. What the Hebrew actually says about Cain might surprise you. Through this lens, Genesis 4:7. The Hebrew word for sin here is chatat. This is the first time it appears anywhere in Scripture, and the verb God's messenger uses for what sin is doing, rovetz, is the word for a lion crouching in ambush, a predator at the threshold. What the Hebrew is actually saying is this: God isn't telling Cain his anger is a vague problem. He's telling Cain there's something alive outside the door of his heart. Something hungry, something that wants him. Now the picture changes. The Hebrew is doing something deliberate. The phrase that follows, "Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it," is the exact same Hebrew construction from 1 chapter earlier. In Genesis 3, those words desire and rule describe Eve and Adam. Now, 1 chapter later, they reappear. But between a man and the predator at his door, the grammar is telling you sin has become a kind of fallen partner, a relationship Cain is being warned to break. Most of us were taught God rejected Cain's offering because it was vegetable, not animal, blood required, plants insufficient. But that's not what the text says. The law of Moses hundreds of pages later accepts both grain offerings and animal sacrifices. But the Hebrew is doing something different. Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground. Generic, some fruit. Abel brought of the firstlings of his flock, their fat portions, firstborn and choice cuts, the best he had. The contrast isn't animal versus vegetable, it's effort versus formality, best versus some. And the word order makes it clearer still. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Person first, offering second. Both times, God's regard was for the worshipper. The offering was just visible evidence of a heart that brought its best, or a heart that brought leftovers. Which is why the warning that comes next, "If you do well, will you not be accepted?" isn't a riddle, it's an open door. Bring your best next time. The acceptance is still available. Cain doesn't bring his best next time, he brings a weapon. Most of us were taught that Cain set out to murder his brother, premeditated, cold-blooded. The first human to deliberately end another human life. But notice what God does next. The sentence is exile, a protective mark, a life of wandering, but with a guarantee, no one who finds Cain may kill him. Cain's punishment was very similar to what the law of Moses, codified centuries later, would prescribe, not for a murderer, but for a manslayer. In Numbers 35, the man who kills with intent gets the death penalty. The man who kills without intent gets exile, protection from the avenger, until the high priest dies. Cain's punishment doesn't match the murderer pattern, it matches the manslayer pattern. Cain had never seen a human die. He'd watched his parents offer sacrifices of animals. He'd watched his own brother do the same. But when he rose up against Abel in the field that day, he was striking out at a man made of dust. The same dust the Hebrew text had been quietly threading through every chapter, without any idea what his anger would produce. Evil hearts don't always plan. Sometimes they erupt, and sometimes they learn, only afterward, what an erupted heart can do. The New Testament tells us Cain's heart was already wrong. John says he was of the evil one. That much is clear. But evil hearts don't always plan. Sometimes they erupt. What the Hebrew text leaves you with is this: a brother was killed. God held Cain responsible, and the punishment fit a man who'd taken a life he hadn't yet known he could take. Whether Cain meant murder or only meant to hurt, and learned only afterward what the cost of his anger really was, Scripture leaves you to decide. God sends Cain east of Eden, a mark on him, protection, the text says, not punishment, a guarantee that whoever finds him cannot kill him. Cain becomes the first wanderer, the first man cursed from the ground his offering came from. The dust that made his father, The dust his offering grew from. The dust his brother's blood soaks into, now closed against him. What the original audience would have understood is something modern readers almost never see. The text doesn't tell us what the mark looked like. The Hebrew word is ot, a sign, the same word used for the rainbow, for the Passover blood on doorposts, for the sun and moon as signs of seasons. A marker, but the text never describes its shape. Across centuries, readers have filled the gap. Some saw a physical disfigurement. Some saw a facial tattoo. Some saw a divine glow. Some saw a protective angel always at his side. Some saw a behavioral change, Cain marked by his own restlessness. The four panels collapse into one truth. Scripture doesn't tell you what the mark looked like. Scripture tells you what the mark did. It protected. Even after the killing, God's posture toward Cain wasn't annihilation. It was preservation. Cain was guilty. Cain was exiled. And Cain was kept alive by divine order against any avenger. Which of the four pictures is right is a question the text leaves open. Why the mark was there at all? The text is very clear. You decide which variant. But whatever the sign was, the meaning was mercy. Watch what happens to Cain's failure when it gets handed down through generations. 5 generations later in Cain's line comes a man named Lamech, and Lamech does what Cain did, only this time on purpose. Genesis 4 tells us Lamech killed a young man, for wounding him, not for trying to kill him, for striking him, a bruise, an injury, and Lamech kills him for it. Then Lamech does something Cain never did. He sings about it. Lamech composes the first recorded human song in the Bible, and it's a hymn to his own violence. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, Lamech sings to his wives, truly Lamech 77-fold. Here you see what's happening. Cain killed in moral failure, hid in shame, begged God for protection. Lamech kills in pride, summons his wives to listen, and declares his own protection. 77 times what Cain got. Cain's plea for mercy becomes Lamech's claim of right. This is what moral failure looks like when nobody breaks the cycle. Cain's killing wasn't excused, it was a warning. Lamech is what happens when nobody hears it. And here's where the New Testament returns the favor. Thousands of years later, Peter asks Jesus, "How many times must I forgive someone who sins against me?" 7 times, Jesus answers, not 7, but 77, the same number, inverted. Lamech demanded 77 times the violence. Jesus demands 77 times the mercy. The Cainite arithmetic gets undone, not by force, but by forgiveness. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Genesis 4:7. The text says Abel's blood cried out from the ground. The Hebrew word for blood is plural, bloods, as if not just Abel but every life he might have had, called out from the dust. Thousands of years later, Peter would write a single line that turns out to be Genesis 4:7, wearing a different translation. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. The crouching predator at Cain's door is the same predator at every human door. The lion is still there. The threshold is still there. The warning hasn't expired. What you do at the door, that's the part that's still yours. Through this lens, the Cain story isn't the story of the first murderer. It's the story of the first warning ignored. The predator was named before the killing. The open door was offered before the closed one was forced. The punishment matched the manslayer pattern, not the murderer pattern. And 5 generations downstream, Lamech sang a song that proved how serious the warning had been. The Hebrew Bible isn't soft on murder. Read again. It's serious enough to name the predator, offer the open door, distinguish manslaughter from premeditation, and trace the cost across generations. Ancient wisdom, modern clarity. Next time on Bible Lens, Cain's line and Seth's line, running in parallel for 10 generations. 2 men named Lamech in the same family tree. The line that started with a killing ends in a song of bloodlust. The line that started with a substitution ends in a man who'll build the ark, the same name. 2 trajectories.